The idea behind the Internet of Things, Internet has taken over everything. And what happens to those disadvantaged communities? We from the research community, the research space, we contribute to these developments. We kind of bring the policy into action when certain concepts are being developed. For example, we're talking about wearables. We're going to have to specify the algorithms. We're going to have to specify things like frequency requirements. We're going to talk about things like interaction to prevent interference and all that. But most of our developments are not really human-centered. The entire world, we're running towards the Millennium Development Goals. We want to have free health, free services, free whatever. We want to have smart cities. But how can somebody who cannot even operate a mobile phone or who can only use the basic Nokia phone operate in a smart city? So my point is, as researchers, can we think of scalable algorithms and scalable systems that make sure that the guy with the iPhone 7 and the girl with Nokia Windows phone and the girl with Nokia can still actively participate in the information society, but at the level of their devices, that no one is left behind? So we're talking about the issue of access and inclusion. Access means providing those contents, digital contents, to everybody, to make everybody part of the information society. But it has to be in the right form, so that if I cannot afford a smartphone, with my basic phone, I can still access these basic services. So my message is for us to tailor our research in such a scalable manner so that everybody will be carried along. And that's talking about my motivation already. Just a little reminder, the Millennium Development Goals ends to poverty. If you come to northern Nigeria, and some other researchers, we had a discussion in the morning, they were also talking about some places in Brazil and Mexico and all that. There is still poverty. And how does our research takes care of those living in the poverty region? They're going to eventually be left behind. They may not be able to use credit cards for transactions, so cashless will still not apply to them. The old men and women there may not be able to use assistive technologies. How do we address that? So that no matter how poor someone is, can easily pick these devices off the shelf. If our research scales it down so much that with the basic functionalities, it is still affordable, we must have done something. Instead of targeting the people from the upper classes. Zero hunger, good health, and so on. These are things that we are all familiar with. So I believe that for the internet to support sustainable development, the Internet Web Framework is a product of research which the smart cities are based on. As researchers, can we build our research to move into the human-centered implementation? When I say human, every human, whether you're living in Borno IDP camp or you're living in Park Avenue, New York, you'll still be able to, the framework will be able to fit into your situation. So it's going to be a situational thing now. And then there has to be an environment where the internet is contributing positively. And it's not just about contributing, what about access? So that if we can build a computing system, maybe Python computing, where the limitations of small screens does not prevent somebody from accessing the internet or accessing content, then the knowledge for community development, local content. There was a discussion earlier today, I don't know how many people were in that session, in the talking cycle, when somebody was talking about the indigenous languages going into extinction. I was instructed in English, yes. I still have my accent, but I have my local language. Nokia built devices for Nigeria in the 3 major languages. Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo, the 3 major languages. But my grandmother cannot use the Nokia in any of those languages because she has to speak the native language. So how do we as researchers build devices that encourage or showcases local content so people can still communicate in their local languages? That is one consideration. Then the youth, they're going to drive sustainability. So we're talking about sustainable development. What's going to happen to the young people if they're not included in the information society? Eventually, whatever knowledge has been gathered will probably die with the old generation. What has the media got to do with it? And then the ICT ecosystems. So between conceptual and real case studies, that's why I had to give example of my own experiences in northern Nigeria, both in the society and within my university. So there is so much exclusion, even as we talk about governance of the internet leading to the development of the Millennium Goals. There is still so much exclusion. And I think those of us from the academia, we don't just flow with the goals of the United Nations, but let's just continue to think in terms of scaling down our research products to accommodate the members of these disadvantaged communities. That is my message, and I really would love to have a robust discussion on this. The framework for the internetware is a research framework. We talked about the software model, the middleware, and the methodology. And in between this, the human consideration is very, very little. In all the publications I reviewed on internetware, there's so much talk about the various models, the autonomic models, which is the middleware, the software model talks about the particular methodology, the methodology itself, but it does not consider the humans, the users at the lower level of the ecosystem. And we're talking about building an open ICT ecosystem, which really in reality shuts out a lot of people who are within the disadvantaged communities. In Nigeria, nobody can openly come out to say I am gay. I watched a movie once on Facebook and I was the lone voice. The police arrested a young man who dressed as a female and he was stripped naked and he was being beaten. And I was like, yeah, he dressed as a female, a cross-dresser. That doesn't remove the humanity from him. So things like that are, those are the people that needs to be considered, things to protect them. There's some organizations who will not provide for genderless washrooms, for example, and they say if you don't identify with any gender, you can go and do it in the bush. So those are the factors that we consider, that nobody should be left out in the development in every aspect, from food to restrooms to education to devices to healthcare. That is my thinking. So if we can identify the sustainable communities in our research, we're not looking at IBM has already done this and it's working in Chicago, but in the slum of Angola, what are the affordances of mobile devices? What content will better suit those people in the internally displaced camps in Borno? And then, if we can scale down such that the man in Chicago is comfortable with it and the young girl in Borno can still learn with the technology we provide. The barriers like high cost, can we build from our research results devices that are affordable for everyone? So that if you can afford an iPhone 8 or 7, whatever is the latest iPhone, and I can only afford a Windows phone, we can still use the same services. And there is no barrier for me because of the cost of my device. Maybe I might not have those fancy screens and all that, but I should still be able to request for those services. It's a challenge for researchers so that our products can be scalable to make sure that everybody is included.